Okay, picture this. It's 7 p.m. You're sitting alone in your living room, and the fridge is just humming in the background.
Right, yeah, just a totally normal, quiet evening.
Exactly. You've had a completely, utterly normal day.
Yeah.
No sudden crises, no terrible news, no major failures. You just, went to work, handled your responsibilities, and ate a decent meal.
So by all objective external measures, your life is perfectly fine.
Right. There's absolutely no logical reason to feel bad. And yet, sitting there on the couch,
Yeah.
you feel it.
Oh, you mean that incredibly subtle, phantom weight on your chest?
Yes, that exact feeling.
It's not a sharp pain, and it's not even a deep, overwhelming sadness. I mean, it's just this vague, hard-to-name humming sensation of, just not being enough.
A quiet, relentless discomfort.
Yeah.
And what do you actually do?
Well, you definitely don't just sit with it.
No. You reach in your pocket, you pull out your phone, and you just start to doom scroll. You don't even want to look at anything specific. You're just doing it to numb the itch, right? To flood your brain with noise.
So you don't have to sit in the silence with that feeling.
Exactly. So today, we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating stack of sources. We've got everything from evolutionary biology papers on primate anxiety to classic sociological essays on modern power and a heavy dose of existential philosophy to top it off.
It's a profound question we're tackling today. I mean, if human evolution is supposed to be about selecting what is best, then why do we still suffer when everything is objectively fine?
Right, because it really feels like a car's check engine light. But not an old clunker. Imagine you have this, state-of-the-art, hyper-engineered luxury car.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so you take it to the mechanic and they run all the advanced diagnostics and they swear the engine is in perfect working condition. But that little red light on the dashboard just stays on. It just glares at you from the console, insisting that imminent disaster is right around the corner. Okay, let's unpack this. Why is our internal check engine light constantly flashing?
Well, to figure that out, we really have to look under the hood at how our brains were actually built. And we can basically skip the elementary school version of evolution where survival of the fittest means, everyone getting stronger and happier.
Right, because evolution just wants us to survive.
Exactly. And the sources point out the precise mechanism of how it achieves this. It utilizes anxiety as an active, relentless alarm system. Sigmund Freud actually argued that humans are driven by two primal forces.
The will to live and the avoidance of pain.
You got it. Your brain's architecture was literally never designed to make you experience a peaceful evening on the couch.
Because peacefulness just isn't a survival tactic. I mean, we treat our anxiety like it's a personal failing or some kind of bug in our psychological software.
But the biological sources argue it's actually our most successful feature. Just think about the actual mechanics of survival on the savannah.
Okay, so picture the early hominids.
Right, the ones who were perfectly zen, who could just sit by a watering hole and marvel at the sunset without a care in the world.
They were definitely the first ones to get eaten by leopards.
Exactly. The ones who survived to pass on their genes were the hyper-vigilant ones. The ones whose nervous systems were constantly scanning the tall grass for microscopic signs of danger.
So basically, you are the genetic descendant of the most anxious, stressed out apes on the entire planet.
I mean, yeah. And that reframes the check engine light completely. The light isn't broken, the light is just doing its job.
Okay, I get the savannah logic. I really do. But the issue is, I am not on a savannah. I am not in a tribe of 10 people foraging for berries. I'm looking at my phone in a climate-controlled apartment.
Right. There's a massive scaling problem there.
Yeah, so is it fair to just blame biology when the environment is completely unrecognizable? It feels like running ancient caveman survival software on modern digital hardware.
Well, that's the crux of the modern mismatch right there. The environment completely changed, but the biological machinery didn't. We don't have to outrun predators anymore, but that highly calibrated alarm system is still active.
Just constantly searching for something to latch onto.
Exactly.
So instead of a saber-toothed tiger, it latches onto a text message from my boss that just says, can we chat? Without an exclamation point.
Oh yeah, the dreaded text.
Right. And my body genuinely reacts with the exact same physiological terror. My heart rate spikes, my pupils dilate, cortisol just floods my system.
You're basically preparing to physically fight a performance review.
Literally, yes.
That is the perfect example, though, because your amygdala does not know the difference between social rejection and physical death.
Because back in the day, they were the same thing.
Exactly. In a small hunter-gatherer tribe, social rejection meant physical death. If you were cast out, you starved. So your brain is hardwired to constantly evaluate your social status relative to everyone around you.
You had to know who was stronger or who had more resources just to survive.
Right, you had to know who could be a threat.
Okay, but surely the answer is just to realize we aren't in danger anymore. Like, if I know it's just a biological glitch, why can't I just logic my way out of it? Surely the modern world is actively making this worse.
Right. Yeah, and that distinction bridges perfectly into the sociological sources we reviewed, because biology is really only half the equation here.
So society is the other half.
Exactly. The modern world we've built doesn't just accidentally trigger these ancient alarms, it actively weaponizes them. The system relies on that glitch.
So if our brains are wired to survive, why does my brain think buying a $1,000 smartphone or getting a promotion is a matter of life or death survival?
Well, this is where we bring in the mechanics of manufactured lack. Sociological thinkers dating all the way back to Karl Marx pointed out that an economic system built on endless growth does not just produce goods.
You'd have to produce needs.
Yes. To keep the machinery running, society basically has to constantly teach you that you are incomplete. You are bombarded with engineered reminders of what you do not have.
Like how my completely functional car suddenly feels deeply inadequate. The literal moment I see an ad for the newer model with a slightly larger touchscreen. I mean, I didn't naturally crave that screen.
No, that craving was installed in you. And it goes far beyond physical products, too. It bleeds into lifestyles and identities.
Oh, for sure.
The philosopher Jean Baudrillard introduced this concept of simulated reality, or hyperreality. When you open your phone at 7 p.m. to doom scroll, society is feeding you a highly curated, heavily filtered, algorithmically optimized simulation of life.
So I am seeing the highlight reels of fitness models and billionaires and people on perpetual vacations in Greece.
Right.
And even though my logical brain knows there are filters and staging involved, my ancient ape brain just registers those images as reality.
Which completely breaks your internal baseline for what normal and enough actually look like. Your primitive comparison engine basically goes into overdrive.
It surveys this digital tribe of millions and just screams that you are at the very bottom of the hierarchy.
Yes, it screams that you are in danger.
But the craziest part of all of this is that nobody is standing over me forcing me to look at it. I am choosing to open the app.
Yeah.
I am choosing to track my productivity and optimize my morning routine.
Well, that voluntary participation is exactly what the philosopher Michel Foucault found so fascinating about modern power structures. He used the analogy of the panopticon.
Oh, the prison design, right, where the cells are arranged in a circle around a central guard tower.
Yes, exactly. And the crucial detail is that the windows of the guard tower are mirrored.
So the prisoners can never see the guard.
Right, so they never know exactly when they're being watched. And because of that uncertainty, they have to assume they're always being watched. They basically begin to police themselves.
Oh, wow. And Foucault argued that modern society functions exactly like this.
He did. We don't have a literal king or a guard tower forcing us to work harder.
Right, the guard tower is my smartwatch, tracking my sleep score and telling me I failed to recover.
Yes. Or your LinkedIn feed casually reminding you that a guy you went to high school with just sold a startup.
We internalize the guard. I am the prisoner and the warden of my own life.
You really become your own most ruthless taskmaster. Sociologist Max Weber pointed out that modern society is built on this relentless, inescapable efficiency.
You're just not allowed to stand still.
Exactly. The moment you achieve something, the goalpost is immediately moved.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because society sells us this pursuit of better, richer, faster as the actual meaning of life.
Oh, absolutely.
We are sold this narrative that if we just hit that next milestone, the next tax bracket or the next fitness goal, the next house, we will finally turn off the check engine light. We'll finally feel that elusive sense of enough.
But the philosopher Albert Camus pointed out the incredibly cruel irony here. These are not meanings, they were just endless goals.
Right, because a goal, by definition, is something you achieve, at which point it vanishes, and you immediately require a new goal to sustain the momentum.
It is literally a treadmill, explicitly designed to never be turned off.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the system actually needs us to feel inadequate.
Yeah.
I mean, if everyone woke up tomorrow morning stretched and genuinely felt like they were enough, the entire machinery of modern society would grind to a dead halt.
Exactly. The economic engine runs entirely on the combustible fuel of your inadequacy. It absolutely does not want you to feel at peace.
Which brings us back to that 7 p.m. moment. You're sitting on the couch and you put the phone down for a second. You refuse to run on the treadmill.
You refuse to buy the new thing or plan the next career move.
Right, so what actually happens in those rare moments when we turn off the screens and just sit in the silence? I would assume peace. Like if I turn off the manufactured lack and silence the guard tower, shouldn't I just feel instantly relaxed?
Well, that is a very common assumption, but the existentialist would tell you that's the ultimate trap.
Really? How so?
Because when you strip away the simulated reality and the tasks and the societal pressure, what you find underneath is not peace. It's often a profound, dizzying discomfort. Jean-Paul Sartre actually called it existential nausea.
Existential nausea.
Yeah.
That is such a visceral, physical word for a philosophical concept. Why nausea?
Well, think about scrolling through a streaming service with 10,000 options versus turning on a TV 30 years ago that only had 3 channels.
Oh man, with 3 channels, you just pick the best one and relax.
Exactly. But with 10,000 options, you spend 45 minutes scrolling, completely paralyzed by the weight of making the perfect choice, and you usually end up turning it off in frustration.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Right. Well, Sartre applied that exact feeling to human existence. When you stop distracting yourself, you suddenly realize there is no cosmic instruction manual for how to live. There is no predestined right version of you waiting to be unlocked.
You are just radically, terrifyingly free.
Yes, and that absolute freedom is what causes the vertigo. We desperately want someone or something to just tell us what to do so we don't have to bear the responsibility of choosing.
I think Camus called this the absurd right. That painful friction between our deep human desire for an orderly, meaningful universe and a world that simply refuses to provide one.
Exactly. We look up at the stars demanding a storyline, and the universe just responds with total indifferent silence.
And because that silence is so deafening, we just scramble to fill it with noise.
Right. The novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote extensively about characters who simply cannot stand this empty state. They are so desperate to escape the existential void that they will cling to absolutely anything.
Like a rigid political ideology or a bizarre internet subculture or even just an endless list of productivity hacks.
Exactly. That makes the doom scrolling make so much more sense. You are not just addicted to the dopamine of the glowing rectangle.
No, I am actively fleeing the existential void. I'm looking for a system, even a toxic, comparison-driven system, to tell me who to be, just so I don't have to face the nausea of absolute freedom.
The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche actually added one more layer to this suffering. He argued that human beings are uniquely tortured by their own potential.
Which animals don't experience it all, right? Like a cat sitting in a sunbeam on your floor is not stressing about whether it's living up to its full feline potential.
No, it's perfectly content just being a cat. But because we have advanced consciousness, we can project into the future.
We can vividly imagine a better, smarter, more successful version of ourselves.
And we are constantly aware of the glaring gap between who we are right now and who we could be. The burden of endless potential.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Are we just trapped? Like we have a biological glitch that keeps us anxious, an economic system that exploits the glitch, and a philosophical nausea waiting for us the moment we try to unplug.
It does sound really bleak when we lay out all the mechanisms like that.
Yeah, because if the universe is silent and society's a treadmill, I'm genuinely asking why I shouldn't just throw my phone in a lake, move to a cabin, and give up.
Well, the sources are clear that we are not doomed. But finding a way through this requires us to navigate around 2 major, very tempting traps that modern culture constantly pushes on us.
Okay, what's the first trap? Let me guess. It's attempting to optimize our way out of the human condition.
Spot on. The first trap is toxic positivity. This is the illusion sold by the billion-dollar self-help industry that you can literally fix this feeling entirely.
That if you just meditate for exactly an hour a day and journal with the right pen and buy the correct supplements, you'll reach a permanent state of enlightenment.
And never feel existential dread again. Right. It is a complete lie, and pursuing it only deepens your suffering when you inevitably fail to achieve permanent bliss.
It's like trying to cure yourself of having a shadow.
Yeah.
You're basically fighting the very nature of what it means to be a conscious primate. Okay, so what is the second trap?
The second trap is total surrender. This is looking at the evolutionary glitch, the capitalist manipulation, and the existential void, and deciding that since the game is rigged, nothing matters.
You embrace nihilism. You let the void win.
Exactly, and Sartre and Camus would completely despise both of those options. You don't get to use the absurdity of the world as an excuse to stop living, but you also don't get to pretend the absurdity isn't there.
You have to look straight at it.
Yes. Which brings us to the practical strategies found in Stoic philosophy. Thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius obviously didn't have smartphones or social media algorithms.
No, but they deeply understood this exact mental friction.
Seneca pointed out a crucial distinction. Suffering isn't the emotion itself, it is our reaction to the emotion.
The initial flush of anxiety isn't the suffering. The suffering is the story we tell ourselves about the anxiety and everything we do to fight it.
Right. Epictetus taught that we must rigorously separate what is in our control from what is not. You do not control the fact that your brain's ancient alarm system goes off when you see a peer succeeding online.
And you do not control the manufactured lack.
But the Stoic middle path is about creating a micro gap.
Let's get concrete with this. Because instead of the cliche check engine light, it feels almost more like a modern spam filter on an email account.
Oh, I love that. How so?
Well, you can't stop the spam, right? The evolutionary anxiety or the societal pressure. You can't stop it from being sent to your server. It's coming.
Yeah, that is inevitable.
But you don't have to let it hit your main inbox and ruin your day. You build a filter to catch it, tag it, and move it aside. So how do we actually build that micro gap in our brains?
Well, when you're sitting on that couch at 7 p.m. and that wave of not enough washes over you, the goal isn't to violently force yourself to feel happy. The goal is to stretch out the fraction of a second between the feeling and your reaction to it.
You pause and simply observe the mechanism.
Exactly. You internally say, my ape brain is looking for my place in the social hierarchy right now, or my system is responding to manufactured lack.
You label the spam. You don't try to shut off the server, but you refuse to blindly click the malicious link. You just let the alarm ring in the background while you sit there, refusing to let it dictate your behavior. You don't reach for the phone.
What's fascinating here is that this practice requires abandoning the hope for a magical cure. The Stoics and the Existentialists aren't promising a final state of bliss.
Right, because as Nietzsche suggested, true strength isn't about eliminating pain or returning to the blissful ignorance of a cat in a sunbeam.
True strength is looking directly at the friction of human consciousness, understanding exactly what it is and not collapsing under its weight.
It is the profound realization that the suffering isn't a flaw in your character. It's the system working exactly as it was designed to.
Yes, your anxiety just means your survival instincts are online.
And your existential dread just means your consciousness is fully functional and grappling with freedom.
When you reframe it through that mechanistic lens, the panic naturally begins to dissipate. You move from being a victim of your biology and society to being a curious observer of it.
It takes away all the shame. So let's synthesize this journey. We started with that nagging, unnamed evening anxiety, that 7 p.m. itch. We learned that we aren't broken. Our brains are just ancient survival machines actively utilizing anxiety to keep us alive.
And we explored the mechanisms of how modern society aggressively exploits those survival instincts, keeping us on a treadmill of manufactured lack so we keep consuming and self-surveilling.
We stared into the existential void, realizing that the nausea we feel isn't sadness, but the terrifying freedom of having no fixed meaning.
And finally, we discovered the Stoic strategy of the spam filter. The power of building a micro gap to observe our discomfort instead of letting it hijack our actions.
It is a radical shift in perspective. You stop trying to solve the human condition and you start learning how to skillfully navigate it. So to you, listening right now, the next time you're sitting alone in your living room and the day is done and the fridge is humming, and you feel that vague, heavy weight settle onto your chest, remember the mechanisms we unpacked today.
You do not have to fix that feeling.
Exactly. You do not have to frantically numb it by staring at a screen. You just have to watch it happen. Know that it is just your humanity, your ancient, highly evolved hardware operating exactly as it was built to.
It is the very proof that you are alive, aware, and engaged with the reality of your existence.
But the sources leave us with a profound question about whether we should even be trying to escape this friction. And I want to push that just one step further for you to mull over as we end this deep dive.
Oh, here we go.
Imagine that tomorrow morning, someone could somehow install a patch in your software. A switch that completely deletes your capacity for existential dread, deletes your anxiety, and totally removes that nagging feeling of not enough. You would just be perfectly, passively content forever.
A permanent, artificial peace. The cat in the sunbeam.
The check engine light goes off permanently. Would you actually want them to flip that switch? Or is that very friction, that uncomfortable, restless, constant yearning in the quiet hours of the evening? the precise engine that drives us to love deeply, to create art, to push boundaries, and to make our lives meaningful in the first place.